The most dangerous thing happening on the planet right now, we're going to talk about a COVID reckoning. We're going to talk about many things tonight on I'm Right. Welcome back. We're all back from Thanksgiving, and it's time to get back to business. Now, what kind of business? Well, I want to talk about something. What keeps you up at night? What's the thing you're scared the most of right now? I'm not talking about little household thing, cockroaches and spiders, lions and tigers and bears. But what do you think is the most dangerous thing happening on the planet right now? For most people, they believe it's Russia. It's radical Islamic terror. That's all in the news right now. Oh my gosh, I don't want to get blown up by some jihadi. Some people, it's China. Take your pick. People have different fears, but I'm here to tell you if any one of those are your biggest fear right now, you're wrong. Your fear, I'm not going to say it's misplaced. Russia's a concern. China's a concern. Jihadis can blow you up tomorrow, today. I'm not saying don't be afraid. But what I'm saying is those things aren't even close to being the most dangerous thing happening on the planet right now. Let's just do a little analogy. Let's say I'm in a car. I have a driver. I got an Uber driver, and I'm driving down the highway. And the car pulling up behind me on the highway wants to kill me, wants me dead. Is that a dangerous situation for me? Of course, it's very, very dangerous. But there are 1,000,001 ways that can go my way, and I'll be fine. But on the flip side, if my Uber driver, if he wants me dead, well, I'm in quite a pickle now, aren't I? The most dangerous thing happening on the planet, nothing else comes close, nothing else is even a close second, is Western governments turning against their own citizens. This isn't unique to America, as we're going to see here in a few minutes. But it most definitely is happening here in America. It is happening in Canada. It is happening in Ireland, which we'll get to. It's happening all across Europe. The, quote, free countries of the world, the Western democracies, as they like to call them, the more enlightened ones, freedom, this and that. They have decided that there's way too much of this freedom thing, and that so many of their citizens loving this whole freedom thing, that's the real problem. The American government declaring you to be the enemy is the most dangerous thing happening. Nothing else comes close. Nothing at all. And here's just a tiny, tiny example of what you're seeing. Don't worry, we'll get to more extreme ones. We just had Thanksgiving, right? And everyone on earth, well, everyone in America anyway, they understand costs are staggering right now. They're staggering. It's unbelievable. I just flew to Montana. Bought 4 tickets, plane tickets to Montana to go up and see my family and have Thanksgiving up there. The plane tickets alone were, it was like taking a vacation to Hawaii. That's what the plane tickets alone were like. And then we got up there for Thanksgiving. And the food costs, we're not even talking a big party, 20, 30 of us. There were 10 of us in the room. The food costs were eye-popping. We're walking through the grocery store looking. The cost of Thanksgiving dinner is up 25%. 25%. Compared to what? Compared to before the lockdowns. And let's just pause on this real quick. I'm not going to get off on a sidetrack. Remember, the pandemic didn't raise any costs. None. Zero. None. The government response to the pandemic raised costs. Shut down the economy. 15 days to slow the spread. $1 trillion here, $1 trillion there, and now we can't afford Thanksgiving anymore. Okay, so the government screwed up. The government screwed up. You didn't screw up. Let's be clear. You didn't raise the cost of Thanksgiving food. You didn't do it. You're not responsible for this. The government is 100% responsible for the inflation in our lives, for the state of our economy, for everything going on. By any measure, it is the government's fault. So what is the government's response to you being upset with all these costs? Well, the government's response, first of all, is they're lying.
So let me hit you with a few numbers. So airline tickets down 13% over the past year. Car rentals 10%. Eggs 22%. Thanksgiving dinner, to be a bit topical, down 4.5%. With turkey down about 6%. That's deflation. That is lower prices in those areas.
This holiday season, families are seeing lower prices on everyday items from gas to groceries. As holiday shopping starts, shelves are stocked and prices for toys, TVs, and used vehicles are all down from last year. And we just saw record Black Friday sales.
Down from last year. Last year when everything was up 30%. So their first response is to lie, but that at least could be understandable. Their next response, though, did you see the latest and greatest? The White House, they're working with social media companies to counter misinformation about prices. So let's just wade through all the noise and get right to the nitty-gritty of it. The government has decided, since they raised the prices on everything, the real problem, it's not the prices. It's not what they did. The real problem is you. You complaining about it. You talking about it. You can't talk about their screw-ups. So instead of fixing their screw-ups, the government declared you to be the enemy, and now they're going to censor your free speech online to make sure you can't talk about it. The government decided you were the enemy. Don't think this is just America. Did you see what happened in Ireland? The latest and greatest, or worst, some Algerian immigrant nut job pulls out a knife, starts knifing a bunch of schoolgirls and teachers. It's absolutely beyond despicable. And the government there felt the outrage immediately. Buses were burning. People were kicking in doors. There was immediate outrage by the Irish citizens, outrage at their government. Why? Well, along the same lines, European governments and the American government importing mass amounts of third world hordes to rape, murder, and abuse their own citizens goes along the same lines as declaring your people to be the enemy. And so the Irish people had enough of it. In fact, UFC champion Conor McGregor came out and said, no more. We are at war, is what he said. This must stop. Get these people out of our country. What was the Irish government's response to that? Remember, the Irish government imported third world hordes to abuse, rape, and murder their own citizens. Some nutball who should have been deported years ago, but they blocked his deportation. Some nutball goes on and knifes a bunch of schoolgirls, and the Irish government has decided that the enemy, it's the people who are upset about it. Listen to this police chief.
Well, I think there's disgraceful scenes in terms of a major investigation, the maintenance of a scene, the gathering of evidence, and we have a complete lunatic hooligan faction driven by far-right ideology, and also then this disruptive tendency here and engaged then in serious violence. Now, we are drafting in resources to deal with that, and that will be dealt with properly.
The police chief, he found the bad guy in this whole thing, and it was his own people. Did you see this Irish leader on TV after the response? Did you see what he had to say?
In addition to that, I think it's now very obvious to anyone who might have doubted it that our incitement hatred legislation is just not up to date. It's not up to date for the social media age, and we need that legislation through, and we need it through within a matter of weeks, because it's not just the platforms who have a responsibility here, and they do. There's also the individuals who post messages and images online that stir up hatred and violence, and we need to be able to use laws to go after them individually as well.
Did you see this senator from Ireland?
When you think about it, all law, all legislation is about the restriction of freedom. That's exactly what we're doing here, is we are restricting freedom, but we're doing it for the common good. You will see throughout our Constitution, yes, you have rights, but they are restricted for the common good. Everything needs to be balanced. And if your views on other people's identities go to make their lives unsafe, insecure, and cause them such deep discomfort that they cannot live in peace, then I believe that it is our job as legislators to restrict those freedoms for the common good.
I almost want to applaud her for just coming on out and saying it. What is this new law? It's a law that says memes on your phone can send you to prison. That anti-immigrant meme you texted your buddy can send you to an Irish prison. They're going to send people to prison for memes? Who do they think they are? The United States of America? We already did that here. We sent Douglas Mackey to prison for a meme. It's not Ireland. It's everywhere. The Western governments have declared war on their own people. Do I need to point out what former director of the CIA, Michael Hayden, had to say? Someone put up a picture on social media of some radical jihadi nut job and then a woman holding a Bible and a gun and a flag and said, "What's the difference?" And he said, "There is no difference." Because the American government, the Canadian government, the Irish government, the English government, the German government, on and on and on, they have all decided, after they have abused and destroyed their own nations, they've decided the enemy is everyone who's upset about it. And let me just tell you, there is nothing in the world more dangerous than that. Nothing. Xi Jinping of China, oh, I hate his guts. He's not going to hurt me. Vladimir Putin, not going to hurt me. Some jihadi, even if he did blow me up today, he's not going to end my nation. But the American government, my own Uber driver, well, he can hurt me bad. Open up a history book if you don't believe me. All that may have made you uncomfortable, but I am right. We're going to talk to Josh Hammer about this and many other things next. We have a great show for you tonight. Before we get to that, let's get to this. Let's take care of some dogs. You see, people abandon their dogs. Can you believe people just leave their dogs? Sometimes they're puppies. Sometimes they're grown. Like a dog that you would love, right? Like your dog. They'll leave apartments and just leave the dog behind. They'll kick their dogs out of on the side of the road of the highway and drive away. That's where Delta Rescue steps in. You see, these dogs would normally go to one of these animal shelters with only so much space, and so after a while, the dog gets put down. Delta Rescue is the world's largest no-kill, care-for-life animal shelter, and they do what they do with your support. Support them in what they do. DeltaRescue.org. All right? We'll be back.
To all those cowardly champions of Ireland who took to the streets of Dublin last night, let me say one thing. Ask your sisters, ask your friends, ask everyone you know what they fear most on our streets. They're afraid of you, afraid of your anger and your rage, afraid of your violence, your hate, and how you blame others for your problems. As a government, we will be relentless in protecting our citizens and defending our people. The Gardaí will be on the streets in large numbers and will do whatever it takes to fight back waves of ignorance and criminality.
Just wrap your mind around how insane it is that you now hear speeches like that regularly from the top elected executive in Western nations. Joe Biden gave a speech just like that. That's the Irish premier right there, speaking down to his own citizens as if they're criminal scum. Joining me now, my friend, the host of the great Josh Hammer Show. Josh, I don't know if many people can see it. I know you see it. I marvel at how common this has become now. For most of my life, you never saw an American president or an Irish premier or anybody speak to his citizens this way. It's second nature for these people now, Josh. They hate us.
Yeah, they really do. And, we've seen this, of course, in America as well. I mean, Jesse, what comes immediately to mind was that infamous speech that Joe Biden gave. I think it was in Philadelphia, if memory serves. It was just over a year ago, that speech in September 2022 with kind of the, dare I say, Nazi-esque red and black lighting behind him, using the military for overtly political, nakedly partisan purposes, calling half of Americans essentially slime balls who deserve the gulag. That's a paraphrase, but it's a fairly accurate paraphrase. It's disgusting stuff, Jesse. And unfortunately, Ireland, I guess, is only the latest country to go down this very terrible road.
Josh, can you explain, take all the time you want, but explain how this could have happened? These are the Western democracies, as they like to call them. This is the free world. This is supposed to be the enlightened part. And now we sit here in 2024, and look, we'll point to Vladimir Putin locking up his political opponents. Our government does that regularly now. This is the norm. We have become what we were supposed to oppose. How did that happen?
So the best that I can do, I think back to all the times that, and there's a lot of people who have made this point, but Dennis Prager, I feel like every other column, every other video he does, Dennis makes this point. And it's a very important point that I think shines a bright light on what we're seeing here, which is the left has moved away from liberalism. And, this is kind of an oft-repeated point, but I think it's directly relevant to what we're talking about here. Back in the day, the left in Western countries, America, the UK, countries like Ireland, France, Canada, back in the day, 50, 60 years ago, at least pre-1960s, pre kind of the campus radicals, pre the cultural Marxism, before this great book that Chris Rufo wrote this summer, kind of exploring America's descent into cultural anarchy since the 1960s radicals. So going back further to that, going back to the 1950s, the American left was fundamentally liberal. And what that means, Jesse, and kind of a very higher important sense, is that whether you were on the right or on the left back at this time, we really kind of wanted the same result. We wanted America to be good. We wanted America to be just. We wanted Western civilization to prevail over our enemies, over the forces of barbarism, whether those forces are the Nazis of Germany, whether they are radical Islamists and so forth there. But as the left it got rid of liberalism, and as it adopted this modern wokeism, progressivism, leftism, whatever word you want to call it, we don't just disagree on the means anymore. We actually genuinely disagree on the ends. And what that means is that these people harbor a deep self-loathing hatred of Western civilization itself, of all that Western civilization has given us, of Jerusalem, Rome, Athens, the great foundational touchstones of what it means to be Western civilization in general, of Christianity and the Bible, scripture, the Enlightenment, all the various things that have gone into what makes this whole civilization great. And that is why you see, these modern liberals, when they get up there and talk, or modern leftists, I should say, they start by talking about these land acknowledgments. They start by talking about how we're all on confiscated land. This is all kind of a great imperial colonialist project. It comes, Jesse, from a deep, deep point of self-hatred. You see Europeans trying to apologize for the fact that European countries were allegedly colonizers for many years here. So that's where this is coming from. He's apologizing on behalf of his own country for his own country's heritage because he ultimately hates what that heritage stands for.
How could somebody grow to hate a country that is so wonderful? Josh, I know you've traveled a lot, you've seen the world, and I'm not naive. I understand America has problems, but man alive, I've seen some seriously ugly parts of this world. And here, we all have an iPhone. Josh, while I'm talking to you, I could sit down and order a pizza right now. Air conditioning, clean drinking water. Everyone's 10 feet away from clean drinking water right now. And yet so many people, grown adults, despise this place. How is that possible?
I think part of it just comes from just a fundamental lack of gratitude. And, the flip side of that, Jesse, is that I think it was Yuval Levin, he's at AEI now. He's the editor of National Affairs, a quarterly conservative journal, and a great kind of conservative thought leader in many ways. I think it was Yuval Levin who first said that the quintessential conservative virtue is gratitude. That's kind of Edmund Burke 101. What did Edmund Burke stand for when it comes to like the definition of a conservative? The definition of a conservative, according to Edmund Burke, is one who cherishes customs, traditions, one who knows that it's very difficult to build good things, but it's very easy to destroy good things. The natural flip side of that, Jesse, is that just as the quintessential conservative virtue is gratitude, what it means to be a leftist, a progressive, a wokester, a Marxist is ingratitude, is lack of gratitude for that which you have, and you have a desire not to build, but to tear things down. That is that same radical impulse that was the campus radicals in the 1960s, back when they were protesting the Vietnam War, when they were protesting all sorts of other stuff that was going on at that time there. And is this same kind of impulse to tear down and not to build that I think we are seeing here when it comes to the head of Ireland basically telling his citizens to just shut up and take it. And if the form of taking it means you have, immigrants from Algeria, as the case may be, in what happened over the weekend, or in Syria, or any of these other countries, if the form of kind of just sitting there and taking it takes, raping, murdering people, then so be it. That's the price that Western civilizations must pay. But the point, Jesse, and you know this better than anyone in the fight, obviously, the point is that we cannot just sit there and take it, because this is evil stuff. Governments fundamentally in the Western tradition are of, by, and for the people. That is what Abraham Lincoln famously said in his Gettysburg Address, and he was absolutely right. So if those words mean anything whatsoever, then these absolute contemptible fools who purport to be ruling over us by telling us what to do like this, they must be held accountable.
Speaking of evil, despicable things, let's talk about the University of Michigan. Not only did they defeat my beloved Buckeyes this weekend, but they treated my friend Josh Hammer like crap. What happened up there?
Yeah, terrible stuff, Jesse. So their local YAF chapter, Young Americans Foundation, they invited me to talk, I guess it was a week and a half ago now. It was Thursday, November 16th, on the war in Gaza. And, my stance on that conflict is very straightforward, which is that there is a good side, there is a bad side. And when it comes to basic things like moral support, diplomatic support, things like that, we should unabashedly support our ally in their attempt to annihilate their genocidal foe. And I got there, Jesse, and within 3 to 5 minutes of talking, these 25 protesters get up there, they throw their hands up into the air. They're all wearing these matching T-shirts that show these Arab children who have died in Gaza since the war started, notwithstanding the fact that, each and every one of these deaths under international law and also just basic morality is attributable not to Israel, but to Hamas because of human shields. Hold all that aside. And then a few minutes after they put their hands into the air, they start coughing every time I open my mouth to speak. I mean, it kind of felt, Jesse, like I was in a tuberculosis ward there. It was very weird. And, I remind them, I say, okay, you guys are allowed to stand there, but it's against university policy. And, oh, by the way, the law to shout down my words. And then the coughs turn into the chants, free Palestine, all that stuff. And university police administrators did absolutely nothing. This went on for 30 to 35 minutes. One total dolt and ineffective idiot got up there at the podium and was like, oh, I'd like to remind you of XYZ things. They drowned him out too. So they ultimately left of their own volition, but this took 30 to 35 minutes. So I personally, Jesse, I'm a lawyer by background. That's not how the First Amendment works. That's just not how it works there. You do not have a First Amendment right to a heckler's veto to shout down other speech. So what I'm calling for is an investigation from the Michigan legislature here into what happened there, because this cannot happen at what is purportedly a very prestigious public university that is allegedly supposed to uphold the First Amendment right to free speech.
Yeah, it's more of a community college anyway. Josh, thank you, brother. I appreciate you very much. All right. We have a culture war still going on. Did you catch that Thanksgiving Day parade? You notice the big tranny flag? We'll get to that with Libby Emmons here in a second. Before we do that, you're going to have to fight back against all this nonsense, are we not? Are you ready? Do you have the energy, the focus for it? Listen, let me just talk to the guys here for a second. Fellas, there's estrogen in the water. This isn't some crazy conspiracy theory. We know there's a ton of it, and we know why. It's because of all the birth control women take. It does not get strained out. When the water gets treated, you drink estrogen over and over and over again. That's why testosterone levels have been cut in half in 50 years. That'll end the country. We won't continue on. I believe in natural solutions. I've been so disgusted by our medical complex in this country that I've gone pretty much all natural. That's why I love chalk so much. Natural herbal supplements. And I personally take a male vitality stack every day. Male Vitality Stacks, 3 different supplements. Don't worry about it. It's incredible. 20% increase in your testosterone in 90 days, naturally. Go to chalk.com. Black Friday specials are still on right now. You have to use the code JesseTV to get those, though, all right? Code is JesseTV. We'll be back. All right, it's time to lighten the mood. And you know I used to love the NFL. We've talked about this before, right? For you new viewers, about the time I got out of the Marines, I wasn't doing all that well mentally, but I found something I was really, a passion, if you will. When I wasn't working or whatever, I would watch the NFL. I just got into it. And I had my team, and on Sunday I would sit down and I would just geek out and I would just obsess all over football. And then St. George Floyd died, and I watched all those spoiled brat millionaires take a steaming dump all over my country time and time again. And I left. And unlike most people, I'm Kelly, so I hold grudges. I'm not coming back, ever. But I'll be honest with you. It's just you and me talking here. I miss it. I miss football. And I have found my new fix, high school football. I go to high school football games here in Texas, and they're awesome. And they're patriotic, and the plays, I mean, look at this.
Wants to throw from the shadow of the goal line. On a slant route. Intercepted! A one-hand pick. My goodness. He goes up with 2, stops it, and then behind his back, he reaches and sticks it for an interception for the Belleville defense. What an amazing play. Wow.
Kids can play, man. All right. I'll see you tomorrow.